Every city has its ghost stories. Old theaters with phantom actors, bridges cursed by suicides, alleyways where footsteps follow you when no one's there. But underground, in the arteries of the subway, the stories take on a different life. Down there, there's no sunlight to banish shadows, just tunnels, flickering lights, and the endless rhythm of wheels on steel. And every now and then, people claim there's a stop that shouldn't be there. In my city, that place is called Blackwell Station. Ask 5 different people, and you'll get 5 different versions of the story. Some say it was built in the 1920s, part of an expansion project that was abandoned halfway through. Others say it opened briefly, but after a series of accidents, the city quietly closed it and wiped it from the maps. The one thing everyone agrees on? If you're unlucky enough to ride the subway after midnight, you might find yourself stepping off at Blackwell Station. And if you do, you don't come back. Chapter 1. The Obsession. I first heard about Blackwell as a kid. My uncle drove the night shift for the subway and told me wild stories when I couldn't sleep. He'd talk about trains that never showed up on his schedule, glowing headlights in dead-end tunnels, voices in the intercom when the line was quiet. But the story that stuck with me most was this. One night, he said, a conductor pulled into a station he didn't recognize. Thought it was a mistake at first. Old tile walls, the word Blackwell painted above the arch. He swore he saw people waiting on the platform, but when he stopped and opened the doors, they just stood there, didn't move, didn't blink, all staring at him. I laughed it off as a teenager, but the story never really left me. By the time I was an adult, I'd fallen down the rabbit hole of abandoned architecture and urban exploration. Factories, old churches, forgotten tunnels. I loved it all. And naturally, the mystery of Blackwell came crawling back. Most people dismissed it, just an urban legend. It's a metaphor for old stations that got bricked over. But some online forums had detailed posts about it. People swore they'd been there. Some described strange tile patterns. Others mentioned whispers echoing through the halls. And then there were the disappearances. I found at least 3 separate news articles spanning 20 years. People who boarded a train late at night and never arrived at their stop. The cases always chalked it up to runaways, crime, or accidents. But in the comment sections, someone always whispered the same thing. Blackwell took them. Chapter 2. The Descent. I had to know for myself. One Friday night, I packed my gear, flashlight, recorder, notebook, and my old camcorder. I told myself it was just another exploration, no different from sneaking into abandoned warehouses. But deep down, I knew this was different. By the time I reached the subway, it was nearly midnight. The platforms were almost empty, just a few night shift workers and drunks muttering to themselves. I boarded the last train heading east. The ride started normally enough. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the faint stink of urine in the corners, the sway of the carriage. Stops came and went, the few passengers trickling out one by one until I was alone. That's when the train didn't stop where it should have. I checked the map. My stop was supposed to be next, but the train rolled on, deeper into the tunnels. No announcement, no familiar chime, just the squeal of wheels and the hum of electricity. Then, I saw it. Through the window, the faint glow of lamps along a platform. The tiles were old, cracked, their edges blackened with age. And painted in bold, faded letters across the wall was a single word: Blackwell. The train slowed. Against every instinct screaming in my head, I stepped off. Chapter 3: The Platform. The air was colder here, thick, stale, heavy with dust. My footsteps echoed far too loudly, bouncing off the tiled walls like I was walking inside a throat. The platform stretched into the shadows, lit only by a handful of flickering bulbs. Cracked benches lined the wall. Old posters clung to the tiles, their ink faded into ghostly smears. And then I noticed them. Footprints, dozens of them, pressed into the dust. Some small, like children, others wide and heavy. They overlapped, circling, pacing, leading toward the far end of the platform where the shadows swallowed everything. I lifted my flashlight. That's when I heard it. A whisper. Faint, impossible to make out. But it wasn't the sound itself that froze me. It was the fact that it was coming from directly behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just empty benches and peeling walls. The whisper came again, closer this time, curling inside my ear like breath. I stumbled backward, and the beam of my flashlight fell on the tunnel at the far end of the platform. The darkness there seemed thicker, almost alive, and as I stared into it, the whispers multiplied, layer upon layer of voices, overlapping, chanting words I couldn't understand. That's when the train screeched back into the station. Chapter 4: The Train. Its headlights cut through the dust, blinding for a moment. The cars rattled and groaned as they pulled in, and I realized immediately this was not the train I had boarded. The paint was peeling, the metal corroded with rust. The windows were coated in grime, but behind them I saw movement. Pale figures crammed shoulder to shoulder, their faces pressed against the glass. When the doors slid open, the stench hit me. Wet rot, river water, and mildew. And then, silence. The passengers didn't move. They just stood there, packed together, their heads tilted at odd angles. Hollow eyes stared out at me, unblinking. My body screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. One of the figures raised its arm and pointed, not at me, at the train. The whispers surged, filling my skull. They weren't just sounds anymore. They were thoughts pressing into my mind, urging me to step inside. I shook my head, stumbling backward, but the shadows of the platform began to stretch, curling toward me like hands. They herded me forward, closer and closer to the open doors, and before I knew it, I was inside. Chapter 5: The Passengers. The doors slammed shut. The figures around me shifted, turning their heads in unison. I saw their faces clearly now, gray, swollen, waterlogged. Their mouths hung open, lips torn and ragged. Some dripped black water onto the floor. None of them spoke, but in my head the voices roared louder than ever. "Join us! Stay forever!" I pressed myself against the wall, clutching my recorder like a weapon. The train lurched forward, plunging into the tunnel. I don't know how long it ran. Minutes, hours, it all blurred. Outside the window, the walls flashed by. But sometimes they weren't walls. Sometimes I saw faces pressed against the glass, screaming silently as the darkness swallowed them again. One of the passengers leaned closer, its hollow eyes locked on mine, its mouth stretching wider, wider, until it split unnaturally across its face. The stench of rot poured out. I blacked out. Chapter 6. The Return. When I opened my eyes, I was standing on a platform. My platform. My stop. The ordinary fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My flashlight was gone. My camera lay shattered at my feet. The recorder still worked, though when I played it back, all I heard was static. And beneath the static, a whisper. My name. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I haven't taken the subway. I walk everywhere now, even if it takes hours. But at night, when the city is quiet, I hear it. The screech of rusted wheels, the low hum of a train that shouldn't exist. Sometimes, if I close my eyes, I can almost see the headlights cutting through the dark. I know the Blackwell train is still running, and I know it's waiting for me. Because last night, as I tried to sleep, the whisper came again, clearer this time, right next to my ear. Next stop, Blackwell.